Well, good afternoon, Etowah County. So the full disclosure non-confidentiality agreement is officially considered satire. And which side is the city of Gadsden on? Those are two pretty big things that came out of the judge's order the other day, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're watching this later, hang out, skip forward a minute or two. We're going to let some folks jump on, but we are going to jump into 22 pages. 22 pages. Now, we're going to hit the high points. You guys read through. It's posted. And there should be a link in the description to go download and read through the whole order from the judge. And it came out Saturday
night at 9:30. He's a hardworking man. Sure is.
Well, thank you, Judge Day, for putting in the work. 22 pages should not be taken lightly. So, guys, if you've got questions as we go through, I see some folks jumping on. Thank you. Hit that share button. Tag a friend. I know this is kind of late notice and it's 2:00 in the afternoon, so presumably everybody is hard at work, completely focused on what it is they're doing, and not worried about their employer looking over their shoulder as they are on Facebook.
This is important stuff, so I can understand if they would be doing that. Yeah, this is important.
No, guys, seriously, so we did get a judge's order that came, got dropped Saturday night, and I just uploaded it into the opposition group, so that PDF is available. There should be a link in the description of this post where you can go download it if you need to after this. There's some good, I think as you put it, it's a good summary of kind of what's going on and where things stand. And we're going to hit a couple of the highlights, but we'll give it just another minute or two. We got about 40-something folks that are jumping in. How are y'all doing today?
It's a beautiful Monday.
Oh, it's a beautiful weekend.
It was.
Got to rock out at Mid-South. Thank you to Gadsden City High School for hosting a big band competition. That was a lot of fun all day Saturday. All right. Well, I guess we won't delay any further. Guys, again, please hit that share button. And, of course, if you can't hear me or hear her, really you want to hear her. I'm not all that important. I don't have much information for you.
Start rolling in a minute.
But make sure to say something, and we'll get it fixed. Elizabeth Chandler said, "Thank you all for your dedication to our county."
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for watching us.
As much as I want to feel selfless, the reality is that this rendering plant is a mile from my house, and I want to do everything I can to try and stop it. It's definitely highlighted a lot of issues that I feel like are things that we need to be talking about in our county. So
it's amazing how much it's been a wake-up call for everybody, and we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot. So, and without this group, without everybody being behind this fight the way they have, we would not be at the point that we are. So, it's all of us fighting hard for this. All
right. So let's jump into this order, and I'm gonna take one of the highlights because it's near and dear to my heart, and quite honestly, I don't know whether it's funny, sad,
absurd.
But absurd may be a good word. So, for those of y'all that don't know, kind of as a joke, well, not kind of, as a joke, I had Christie basically take and write a legal document that was the opposite of a non-disclosure agreement. And for those of you going way back, you'll remember the reference to all the NDA stuff and why nobody was allowed to tell anybody what was going on. So put together a full disclosure non-confidentiality agreement that I put out there for everybody to go and plug in your email address to sign for the Etowah community presentation before the airport authority. Well, lo and behold, the attorneys that
For Pilgrim's Pride. It was Exhibit A.
Yes.
In our August 23rd hearing. It was great.
So it was used in court to basically say that we should be more transparent. The short version is they were asking a bunch of questions about what our plans were for development. This was all done before we made the presentation. And so anywho's the real short version is I think there's about 3, maybe 4 paragraphs that the judge actually took his time. And I appreciate that, Judge Day. I hate that you have had to spend your time on this, but he had to spell out and officially say that the court had determined that it is rather obvious that that document was meant as satire.
And was not a legally binding document.
Was not a legally binding document. And that it yes. So that's where we're at with this, is that we're having to get decisions made on satire versus non-satire for a full disclosure, non-confidentiality agreement. So that was one of my little tidbits of enjoyment in this order. It's 22 pages. There's a bunch more in there. Christie's got some real highlights. Mine's really not all that important, although it does kind of speak to some of the absurdity of all of this. But there's definitely some interesting questions that are posed. And so we'll jump in with that. Where do you want to start? Get folks the context of what happened.
Why were we in court? What's brought this order on, and why was this satire agreement used as an exhibit in this hearing? During the month of August, there was several opportunities for Pilgrim's Pride to depose members of the plaintiff intervenors in the court case. That was Todd Harden, David Chadwick, and Trent Thrasher were the first 3 people that they wanted to depose. This was probably the middle of August, before the August 20th presentations. So it was a couple of weeks prior to that. And right off the bat, these were the first 3 people that they were going to depose. And right off the bat, there was a lot of intimidating and harassing questions and behavior that we believed that the Pilgrim's Pride attorney took part in.
In your opinion?
In my opinion. Well, and it was so much of an opinion that we filed a court pleading. That's right. And so we believed that those were issues that the court needed to address before we went further and offered up anybody else in the plaintiff intervenor class in order to depose them. We felt like the judges needed to sort through kind of what questions were too much, and what questions were reasonable ones to ask in light of the court case that they had agreed to take part in. The concern is that this is a group of 22 people who've come together to fight for this county, to be part of this case here. There should be limits to how far the Pilgrim's Pride lawyers should be allowed to push this and to go. That's what the court's for when there's issues come up, and they often do. That's when motions for a protective order are filed to ask the judge, like, we believe this is going too far, enter an order and put some guidelines, put some parameters on them on how far they can go. So we had a hearing on our motion on August 23rd, and that's when the full disclosure agreement. Because part of one of the arguments that they were making is that, well, Judge, they claim to be transparent with everything, so why shouldn't we be able to ask them anything we want to, no matter how irrelevant it is to this case? And so then they got that agreement as the argument was it was some type of evidence of an agreement to let the full any discovery take place in any way, and so I kind of laughed when they brought it out as exhibit, because it's satire and you read it, and I said
and the judge specifically says in his order on cursory review, not even deep review.
It's not a binding. Anyone that read it, you guys who went online, is it still up? People.
Yeah,
still online. You should go
it's
on
probably
Advanced
somewhere,
Etowah.
and I probably should repost
You
it
should
now.
repost it. You should totally repost
just
it
for a laugh. But
and so I kind of I said, Judge, this was satire. I mean, the idea that this was somehow some binding legal document to expose everything. And I told the judge, I argued, at some point you have to laugh at some of it's so absurd, and that's what this was here. And just a cursory review of it makes it clear. No, so that was part of what was argued at the hearing on August 23rd.
He did. I thought, because I read it really before having much conversation with Christie. I read through. So as a non-lawyer, as a mildly intelligent human being, I read through. Obviously there's some legalese in there, but I felt like the judge did a fairly straightforward job of explaining the issues with Todd Harden, the issues with David Chadwick in terms of the concerns about narrowing. And then, a big one with Todd was basically kind of the fairly blatant threat that there might be criminal,
It was really that's what started off sort of the whole, and in the lawyer world, when your client is being deposed and those types of things are said, that's when you go into protect mode,
right?
Because you don't really, that's generally outside the bounds of what you're allowed to do, to threaten some type of, that the testimony being given would expose the deponent to some type of criminal behavior or criminal charge in a civil case. There's rules that lawyers aren't allowed to do that type of thing, and so where the concern was those types of questions were that were getting too close to that line,
right,
and had crossed it, and so that's what started the whole problem.
So, and we won't get into all the detail
because the court order talks about that.
Yeah, he gives a good detail. I'd say props to Phil Williams. Basically, I mean, if you want some drama, this is going to make a great movie one day.
I can't wait till I can upload the whole transcript to see what Phil's reaction. He was like. It was good. It was a lot
we're
of drama.
Done. Pack up.
We're done. He's
briefcase. Walking out the door. Come on, Todd. We're done. We're out of here. And I'm sure Todd enjoyed that as well. So I felt like the judge. If you go read through that,
read through the order, and the judge does a really good job of explaining. And he says in the order what was said. He pulls the parts of the transcript and they're in here, and so it'll go through and give you some of the details on why the alarm bells were ringing and why we kind of stopped and said we just need the court to intervene and we need the court to make some calls here, and that's what this order does. It does that and addresses some other things as well.
And so it gives a protective order basically. So it kind of sets some boundaries on going forward.
So this was a big hearing. This hearing, there was a lot of issues. We had our motion for protective order. The city again argued its another motion to dismiss on the same grounds it had argued it before. The judge denied that. The airport authority had filed a motion to compel, arguing that we had not responded to some requests to admission, that they didn't like how we responded because we denied the admission. They didn't like that, and they wanted the judge to compel us to do something else. The judge denied that, and then it was a status conferences as well. That was actually later. There was another court appearance that was later, and so a status conference was held because the trial is set for October the 12th, and because we had stopped deposing people because of this behavior. We had put the brakes on and said until we get an order from the court creating some guidelines, we're not putting any more of our people up, and so that's caused a delay. And that was in. We wanted to try this thing. October was the date we wanted to try it, but we believe that it was more important to protect our people, get some parameters in line from the court, even if that ended up, pushing dates back. So this order also does that as well, and so it continues the final hearing to January 3rd. So instead of October 12th, our final hearing is now set for January 3rd. Happy New Year to all of us. So So that this order does a lot, and that's why it's 22 pages long. Just Judge Day just is so thorough and so well researched in what he does. And if you read it and have any questions, please post in there. But let me talk about what I really want to talk about. Are we ready?
Okay.
Are we ready?
All right. So hold off.
Okay.
Let me sum that up, guys. So So we'll get back to doing depositions now with the protective order. I know it's probably felt fairly publicly like it's fairly slow. There's been a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, we can't live feed the courtroom stuff and these depositions. We're not releasing all of the transcripts and all that stuff just yet. And trying to be, number one, 100% respectful to the court and the judiciary process. And the rules and just the decorum. So all of that one day will certainly all come out. So at the hearing for the zoning case has been now.
The final hearing
would be in January. So the legal battle continues.
Between now and then, we will re-engage and we will depose more people. They will depose ours. There'll be experts that we've retained and they've retained that we're going to depose. So it's going to be a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of fun stuff that won't be. It's just the attorneys doing a lot of work behind the scenes, unless another discovery dispute or something comes up that will result in another order here.
So the good stuff, and this is stuff that we really wanted to come on and talk about, is what?
All right. So part of the hearing too at the status conference. And I mentioned this before in our live 2 weeks ago. I think that what the judge had mentioned is that, and I'll just kind of read what he wrote. This is paragraph 22 of the court's order. And he says that in the status conference, thank you, Michael. Look at you, you're fancy. You got it up there. Plaintiff's counsel commented as to the various steps which had been taken by the city to move the rendering plant project forward. Counsel for the city stated that actually the city council had passed a non-binding resolution not to give incentives to Pilgrim's Pride, and that if anything, the city of Gadsden was acting in the plaintiff's corner. This is the city attorney that was saying, and part of his argument about how the cities should be dismissed out of this case. You remember I told you that they re-engaged on the motion to dismiss that the judge denied. But as part of that argument, they were saying, Judge, we have nothing to do with this, and in fact, our city has voted. And so then the judge sort of picks up on that, and it says, following up on the council's comment, the court noted that it understood from broad local news coverage that in fact the council had voted to oppose the construction of the proposed plant on Steel Station Road. In light of that vote, the court stated that if the city intended to file a motion for realignment, meaning moving from a defendant, we, the plaintiff intervenors, all the owners of the property have sued the city. Pilgrim's Pride intervened. The airport authority is a party on the defendant side. So the court is asking if the city wants to file a motion to realign as a plaintiff on our side, that if the city intended to file a motion for realignment to be designated as a party plaintiff rather than a defendant in the case, it needed to proceed to do so. As the time for the trial was approaching, the deadline for filing such motion for realignment of any party is hereby set as September 30th, 2021, which is Thursday. And so the judge not only mentioned that in the hearing, in the status conference we had a couple weeks, he's now put it in his order, and he has said, city, if you're going to realign, now's the time for you. And he's put a deadline on that, which I think is a meaningful date for all of us, because there's one city council meeting, which is tomorrow, between now and that Thursday deadline. And obviously, counsel for the city is going to be asking his client.
Now, are they required to have that conversation, assuming that the city attorney or that the attorney representing the city, because it's not actually the city attorney, right? We're not talking about Lee Roberts.
We're talking, both Brad Cornett and Lee Roberts are, but it was Brad that was at the hearing that day. Okay. Lee was not there. Mm-hmm.
So assuming that they're going to confer with their clients, the city, which would be the city council and the mayor.
The city council hired Brad
Okay.
to be their attorney. If I remember correctly, at the council meeting, remember that was part of a newspaper article and other
So
things.
does he have to do that publicly? Can it be done in executive session?
It would be done in an executive session.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
My guess would be, but it would have to be like if the client is a body of 7, right? Then you'd meet with the body of this. If any client, like any client is you can be a human being, it can be you, or if it's a board, it's the whole board, or a council, it's the whole council. So there would have to be some engagement in order to respond to this deadline. An attorney's going to talk to their client and go, what do you want me to do? And so it sure would be great. We've got a resolution of the city from a couple of weeks ago that if the city council, decided to realign and come as a plaintiff, we would welcome the city to come in as a plaintiff and join us in the fight with Pilgrim's Pride as a defendant and the airport authority. Because, now that the council has voted the way they have, it would make logical sense. And the court mentioned it at this hearing and in this order that they would realign as well too. But the council is going to have to decide that in some type of pleading file.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, I think it's a big deal to note that this was not, and I don't want to make a dig on you guys as our attorneys, but this was something the judge brought up on his own.
Absolutely, it was a great point. I mean, and he's absolutely right. And this was him. That's correct. He's a very intelligent man. Mm-hmm.
So what would that mean if the city were to realign as a plaintiff in this case that's dealing with zoning of city property, or at least co-sponsored city property? Like, that sounds very confusing and unusual to me.
Well, their position would then necessarily change. That they would be the plaintiff, they would be part of the claims we have, right? And rather than having to defend against those claims, then they would be asserting those as well. And if we've got a majority of the council asserting those, that we are with the plaintiffs, then you've got this idea that yes, it would be improper to rezone this. It would be spot zoning. A nuisance is what this would amount to, and so therefore that finding would that not end this? Arguably, it should. Yes, because
they're
the parties who would rezone it. So if they realign with us, and they would be basically saying,
because the airport authority is not able to rezone that land.
They'd have to request. They'd have to ask for it.
Right.
Pilgrims and the airport authority would have to ask for it to be rezoned, but the planning commission would go before it. But ultimately, the council decides whether to rezone. So if they join our side and take the position you can't rezone, then what else is there to decide? Maybe that would finally convince Pilgrims to find somewhere else to locate, which is why we thought this was important for people to know, with one council meeting between now and when the pleading has to be filed on Thursday, that, encouraging the council, join us.
Yeah.
Come to our side, and then maybe Pilgrims will realize that the level of success they'll be able to achieve, even if they should win the court case, because the city is not going to rezone.
So I have not seen the agenda for tomorrow. I know it's already out.
Yeah, Reba posted it, I think.
Has anybody seen? I know you've been running around literally the entire morning.
I have.
We're squeezing you in and getting you out of here in just a few minutes for your next to do. If you've read the agenda, can you drop in the comment if you've seen that they have anything that looks like it would be a time for the attorney to address? Maybe they wouldn't put it on the agenda. They just do it in executive session.
They dropped the agenda on Friday at noon, and this order came out on
Okay, so it's probably
Saturday
not going to be
night.
in there.
They may amend the agenda. I don't know. Sometimes the agenda really doesn't mean much for the city council. They go off agenda all the time.
Right. So how do they do an executive session? So if they're all virtual,
they have a way that they can kind of go into a private Zoom space and do all of that. So they would have the way of doing that. And so that may be ultimately what we see. But if there is a decision to realign as the plaintiff, then that would be a big deal.
And I know this is kind of short notice, but it may be worth everybody's time to hop on, shoot a text, shoot an email to your representative, to your city council member, for those of you that are in Gadsden, and call your buddies, let them know, hey, y'all may want to. You may want to realign. The judge brings up a really good point, since you've passed this resolution. So perhaps that non-binding resolution really isn't all that worthless. So, but interesting. Let's jump in. I saw one question. It's showing up really small. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Here we go. Could the city realign just to get information? Skeptical. The city has all the information that we want.
That's right. They would not be in on our meetings, so they would not be part of the team, right? They would not be a plaintiff.
I'm sorry, my brain was working a different way. You're getting it right.
They would not be part of the plaintiff team and access to us and to our side. I mean, so just because they're a party plaintiff doesn't necessarily mean they're in on all of those sort of matters. So no, it wouldn't mean.
And to be honest, I don't really know that they'd gain much. I mean, unless they're involved in some sort of strategy discussion. I mean, all of the information that we're looking at or that y'all are looking at is their information, or right now there's still plenty of stuff that you're not looking at because they're not providing it still. So, I mean, we don't have anything for them to really look at and read through, and
that's all the information that we got from them or not getting from them, and it wouldn't cause any impact as far as them having access to some like strategy that we have or anything along those lines. But we would love the city to truly and sincerely, join in our fight. That would be great. And I would welcome that opportunity.
The city is playing checkers and Judge Day is playing chess.
If you read his order, he's a grandmaster. So,
all right. Any progress on David Hooks and IDA?
That's a great question. We went down that road in the open records case, and there was a decision made that a non-governmental entity is what the IDA, how it was established. That's how that was set up years ago. It might have been run as a public entity before Hooks came to being, but it's not now. The way to solve that is elections and getting somebody in there who's in the city who is willing to clean that up. That's our best solution. It's not to say that something can't come up that could make us revisit that, but unless and until we have some type of additional evidence that would be worthy of bringing that back up before the court, our solution right now or your solution would be elections.
Yeah, sadly, 12 months. All right. A Facebook user asks, reading some of the deposition issues in the court document, why isn't Northeast Alabama Regional Aviation a defendant in this case? Some believe they are the financial conduit of the GAA.
Is that Lance?
I don't know. I'm guessing it's Lance.
Great question, Lance. We're working on it. So you may be hearing more about the FBO that's coming up. I know that as you know, we're asking for more information about the FBO and trying to get the FBO/Airport Authority attorney in order to engage on that. So those are questions we all have.
Yeah, as we've gone through this process, and I know, I'm one of those aviation guys that's been screaming about a lot of the way things are structured. We've gotten through and unwound a lot of things through this entire process. The IDA is a great example of going through, and obviously as we dissect more of the airport authority and try to understand, and that brings up the discussion of like, okay, well, if the city, if the city realigns, but the city is also a co-sponsor now, which was paperwork that they had to do with the FAA, co-sponsor of the airport. It brings up a lot of questions in what is clearly a convoluted mess in our community. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question and a very, very valid point in all of this with the airport.
And
so
a lot of you have gone through the audits that have been put up on the page. I know I've watched as you guys have gone through it and asking questions about what's this FBO doing? What is all about? So I think those are all fair things, and hopefully we'll get some more answers on that. That's our goal.
So Danny Starnes, how can the IDA be a non-governmental agency when it's funded with tax dollars?
So it's an NPO. It's like a nonprofit organization. The city enters into contracts with outside agencies, is what it's called, and the IDA. And usually outside agencies are things like United Way, or those
right.
types of CED, mental health, that kind of stuff. But the IDA has been classified, and so those agencies receive money from the city, but obviously they're not an arm of the city. What makes the IDA unique is its sole source of funding. The city is the only funding that it gets, and it is completely
as far as we know.
Well, that's what, when we deposed David Hooks, that's what he said. So whatever, that is what he said.
Okay.
So, and so if that is the case, then you've got a sole source sort of the entity is funding. Now it does have a board that is an existing board that it's a appointing board. So as people roll off, the remaining members appoint the new one on. And so we asked a lot of questions when we deposed Larry Means and David Hooks about how does that work? What does is the city involved in that? And we got a lot of differing information. We had Larry Means, who was the former chair, talk about, oh yeah, the city's real involved. They helped hire David Hooks and they did all this. But then you've got David Hooks saying, no, the city is arm's length, and they don't appoint our board, and so if unlike like the Gadsden Airport Authority that's created under a statutory code section, this IDA is not. It's not created under the statutory IDA code section, and unlike the Airport Authority where the board is appointed by the city, the IDA has a board that appoints itself. Those are the distinguishing factors that the judge found, even though it was funded 100% by the city, that made it an NPO.
So the short version, when this all started, Christie's argument and the legal team's argument was that it was indeed a governmental agency, right, and that it was subject to Open Meetings Act, and that all of that kind of stuff. So I guess we've kind of all just accepted that's what the judge determined based on his knowledge and understanding of the law and the information provided to him. And we go, okay, well, now that that's determined, which is good, at least it allows us to take the next step, which is, well, that's a stupid way of setting up something like an industrial development organization. And to your point about, is it established under the proper statutes and all that kind of stuff? So the answer then is, well, let's fix it. Let's not worry about the fact that it's jacked up now. Of course, it opens up the door that the city council could not fund them which gets to the discussion of the 2022 budget, which I do believe they do have funding. So they chose not to do that this year, but that goes back to elections and encouraging folks that are going to run for office to be prepared to restructure stuff like that, particularly the IDA as an issue, because it's ridiculous.
Well, and to go back and to remind everybody, we have 2 cases pending now. We have the open records case against the city and the water board and the IDA for failing to provide the records to the open records request we had made. It is in the open records case that the IDA argued we are not a public entity subject to the open records case, the open records laws. And so that's when all of this came down, that the judge analyzed all of these things and found that it was not. So, but we still have that case pending against the city and the water board. The second case is the zoning case, which is what this order is about, which we have the final hearing for in January 3rd. Excuse me. And so those are the 2. That's kind of how we, just to give a quick kind of regroup on how we got here. We filed those in January.
So, Jerry Cook, why would the city realign with us when they are the reason we're here in the first place? I don't know, Jerry, if you were on the beginning of our live here, go in and read. The judge brought up the question because basically the judge said to the city, hey, so the city government or the city council has put this resolution basically against exactly what we're fighting over right now. So my assumption would be that you guys would realign because of that. And in this order said, y'all need to make a decision on whether you're realigning or not by the end of the month. So that's why potentially, and in logical world, if you put out a resolution as the city against this about a zoning issue that you control said zoning, you would probably then want to just drop the whole case and it all be done because there's no longer a reason to fight over the zoning. So
that's right. And
is that a fair synopsis?
That's absolutely a fair. And so when you've got a city, a majority of the city voting to oppose the project it is a defendant for, then the question necessarily comes, well, is if you're opposing what she's a time to flip to the other side then. And that's a great question, and it kind of shows first of all, it's a great question for the judge to bring up, but that the level of sort of insanity we've reached, that we've got this position where the primary defendant has now voted to oppose this co-defendant. Is it time for them to move over? It's just time. No. It is just time for
this needs to end.
Stop.
Now, in all fairness, so it was not a unanimous vote so you represent other municipalities, mainly Boaz. Mm-hmm. So if you were the attorney in this situation, what are you thinking about if you've got, we're going to assume that the mayor's office is all for this and would want to continue the fight based on everything we've seen from them. You've got some on the city council. Who are you working for as an attorney, and how do you deal with taking that input from your boss?
Well, in this case, you got to remember too, Brad is hired by the council.
Okay.
So he's an outside attorney. So there's the city attorney, which is in this case Lee, right? And then there's Brad, who's the city, and the council hired him. And so with that in place,
with tax dollars.
So if it obviously that's the question that he's going to have to inquire with his client. And what do you want me to do? And those are tangled. It shouldn't be that tangled, but it's become this here. So we're outside of logical realms, Michael.
Yeah. Well, hey, and Casey's
too.
Bringing up some good. So resolution to not offer incentives isn't the same thing as saying they want to be on the other side.
It's not.
It is not.
The question is
But
being
let's not
posed.
forget the resolution wasn't just about the incentives. It was also that it should not be located at the airport, which to me is even more important in the question of which side of a zoning case, because if this, I mean, this case really only focuses on the zoning of that piece of property, right?
It does and it doesn't. So yes, the primary issues is whether it's spot zoning to rezone the airport property to allow the rendering plant. And the council's resolution is to not offer incentives and that they do not support it at the proposed location.
Right.
That's what but the lawsuit also involves, is it a nuisance countywide? Would having a rendering plant anywhere in Etowah County be a nuisance, period? So remember, we amended our complaint, right? Initially, it was just, it couldn't go there. And then we amended our complaint later on when it became apparent that there were conversations to move it somewhere else. There was then we filed to amend our complaint to kind of broaden that. So,
so Janice, let's bring this up here. They wanted to make sure Etowah community did not receive any incentives either. I don't know that resolution. Would it apply to Etowah community if the airport?
I don't believe it. It was related to the Pilgrim's Pride rendering plant specifically. There has not been the IDA nor anybody has approached Etowah community about offering any type of incentives.
Not word one from
it's
the
not
IDA.
to say that the expectation wouldn't be there that they would do that, but they have not offered that.
All right. And to the discussion of Etowah community, we are still waiting. And still some emails going back and forth, some more questions being asked and that kind of stuff. So obviously we'll let everybody know when we know something.
Right.
But let me see. Guys, good questions, good thoughts. I won't lie, it's a bit of a head scratcher. But I feel like I've been scratching my head for about 10 months now. So,
but it's a great point to make, that at this point, what else is there that needs to be done in order for it to be clear that Pilgrims needs to locate somewhere else. And if the city realigning in the court case can help hasten that along, then I hope the council does it.
And CC also stop paying people to sit on boards. If one truly wants to serve in a capacity, one will give of their time freely. That's definitely a good discussion. If nothing else, consistency in the pay of boards.
Well, just the whole discussion about boards and how they're set up and appointed and if they're effective or not, I think is worth having, CC. Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely that to me is one of the critical issues that we have, that no matter what we want, when you've got a bunch of the same people on all of the boards, you in essence take a representative government, even if you actually were representing, and you narrow that representation down, and it just defeats the purpose of the whole structure of the government. If you're going to put, the majority of everybody on all the same boards, then why not just have one board? And then we can just have the city council and the mayor and one board that does everything, because that's kind of...
Well, and I get the point. They've said, I guess, that nobody's wanted to serve. I don't know how accurate that is or not, but I think everybody's ready to see, for whatever reason that problem is where we find ourselves, it needs to be fixed. Well, and
it's a new day.
It's a new day. That's
and
right.
And as we've talked about it over and over and over again, there's a lot of us that haven't been paying attention. There's a lot of us that probably have said, I don't have time to do that. Well, there's a lot of people saying they do now. Jason Wilson made a great point when they were electing or nominating the new member of the airport authority. It sounds like he has been talking for years about wanting to be on the board, and at least he's a pilot. That's good. But Jason did bring up the good point that we've got a stack of of people that like in the last 2 months have submitted their names and are eager to serve. It doesn't appear that they were necessarily. I don't know if they were looked at. I don't even know what that process is to determine the nomination.
People, I've heard from several people that have served on the airport authority and other boards that just sort of threw up their hands and said, "I'm one voice that doesn't get anything done because it's these same." And so, to the extent people have felt frustrated, as if their service was not going to be a meaningful one. I think now's the time to address all of that.
Yep.
and find ways that people can meaningfully serve, that there's a fair way in order that they're reviewed and people are chosen in a way that provides an opportunity for others to sit at the table and have a voice in what's going on. And I think people understand now it's important they have a voice.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, I know, Christie, you've got to get out of here shortly. And thanks for jumping on with us in short notice. Go read through the judge's order. I hate reading stuff. I'm lazy, so I won't lie to you. But I read through it. It's a good read. It's a good understanding of what's going on. I thought he did a very good job of making it so that you don't have to be a lawyer to really read through. And those of you that really want to geek out on it, there's probably some great nuggets in there to dig a little deeper. So that is the PDF is available. I posted that in the opposition group. I can't post PDFs to the Facebook page for Advanced Etowah, but there's a link to the app that we're building out. Where you can just click on it and download the whole 22 pages.
You should do a link to the full disclosure agreement.
Yeah, I'll get that uploaded for those of you.
So you can look at it as you look at the order. But the order really does. It's a great way of getting. If you really want to know where we are, where we're going ahead, it's a great sort of outline of that. So I encourage people, of course, I love this stuff. So I'm like, read it. It's great. But, ask any comments. If you have any questions, ask those in the comments. I'll go in there and do the best I can to answer those.
Would it be illegal for us to start a betting pool on what the city council is going to do with some of these decisions as a fundraiser for Advanced Etowah to keep?
What call when you have in the grid, the grid where you like pick a score, what's it called? I'm not a betting person. I don't know. We're horrible, horrible gamblers.
Horrible gamblers. If we got any people with a gambling addiction out there, no, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. Just like I was with the full disclosure agreement. Mm-hmm. So nobody bring that up in a court case that I'm encouraging, gambling or some illegal activity. I don't know.
Exhibit 2. But
it is just kind of getting funny that these are the days of our lives, so to speak.
It is, but it's
still lots of ways to end this.
Lots of ways, and I know that's what everybody. Every time I go anywhere, everybody. The question I get is, why is this not over? Why is this not over? And I tell people that is a great question, and I think we just have to keep on and pushing in any way that we can, but it's not over yet, but there's multiple ways that it can be, and hopefully sooner rather than later that's what's going to happen, because everybody's ready to move on to, okay, now that we know where we are, now that how do we fix this? How do we rebuild? How do we kind of come out of this better for having been through it, and mm-hmm. being able to recognize really clearly what our problems are and how we got here, and have that contrast about what we don't want to be. There's nothing like contrast to provide some clarity. And so we're all ready to move to that stage, and I think everybody's prayers that's rather sooner than later. But in the meantime, we're just going to fight every day until we're there.
Well, for all you saying thank you, I will say a welcome. You're welcome from those of us with Advanced Etowah. But it's really, I cannot put it into words and express it enough how this is a community thing, and I'm blessed to just be a little piece of this. This really is about the community and the community that we live in, and I certainly would not invest the time that I have and do what I've been doing if I didn't really believe and wasn't so encouraged and proud of the community that I live in. This has been awesome to see, and thank you guys for staying involved, for getting out in thunderstorms to put up signs, for any little thing. Just sitting down and praying for our community. Whatever you can do is massively appreciated, and nothing. Nothing is more important than the community's involvement in all of this. So, guys, thank y'all for your time. Go read the order. It's fun. It's interesting. It's man, I just can't wait to see the movie. It's going to be awesome.
By the time this county's done with this stuff, we're going to have legal experts. Y'all are going to be like knowledgeable about government and civics and the legal system, and we're going to go into a period where people really understand and can ask questions and can come out of this knowing, now wait a minute, that doesn't sound quite right. Now I know how that's supposed to work because all of this has sort of happened. So we got people reading 22-page orders. I absolutely love it. So.
All right, guys, y'all have a great afternoon. More and more to come, and we'll talk to y'all again later when we've got some more info. AE, we are kind of formulating the plan of what we're going to do with elections and all that kind of stuff over the coming 12 months. So you'll see more coming out in the next couple of weeks. But just wanted to jump on and talk to you about this order, kind of explain what it's about, and bring up some good questions to be had. And is the city going to change sides? That'd be awesome to see. So we'll talk to y'all later. All right. Have a great afternoon.